This is a personal example of something that I use Legal Shield for this year, and it has to do with current events. My father in January of this year, he got sick, and we didn't know it at the time, but it turns out it was COVID. And so I ended up taking him to the emergency room at the hospital, parked right in front of the emergency room doors, and put him in a wheelchair and rolled him into registration. While he was getting registered, I ran out and parked the car. Well, I came back in and my father was gone. And I said, hey, where's my dad at? And they said, well, we already took him back. And I said, great. Would you please take me to him? And they said, no, you can't be with him. And I said, well, what do you mean I can't be with him? And they said, well, he hasn't been tested for COVID and you haven't been tested for COVID and you can't go back there with him. And I said, I'm his healthcare power of attorney. He's currently incoherent, so he's not going to remember or know anything the doctors or nurses say. I need to be with him. Would you please take me back? And they told me no. And I said, you know what? That is an unacceptable answer to me. And this is the difference in having Legal Shield and not, because 22 years ago, before I was a Legal Shield member, in that situation, I probably would have lost my religion on that person up in the middle of the hospital. Right. But I didn't do that, right? I said, that's an unacceptable answer. I stepped right outside the emergency room doors. I tapped the app. I called my law firm, told them what was going on. The attorney told me, well, Mr. Geithner, that must be a hospital policy because it is not a law in the state of North Carolina. She said, so here's what I recommend that you do. And she told me exactly what to do, who to call, what to say. And I took her advice. I called the executive offices of the hospital, patient relations, talked to one of the executives, told them what was going on. They sent somebody down right away. The lady pulled me over in a corner and went on to try and explain to me why I could not go back with my father. And I stopped her and I said, listen, I understand that that is your policy, but my attorney has told me to ask you for an exception to your policy. And the lady said, well, hang on one second. Let me see what I can do. And she took off for about 5 minutes. She came back and she said, Mr. Geithner, we've done some checking and it turns out we have a little bit of wiggle room in our policy. So I'm going to take you on back to be with your father right now. Now, while I was happy that that was my end result and my outcome, as I was walking through the waiting room, going to be back with my father, there was dozens and dozens and dozens of people sitting in that waiting room. I'm sure many of them sitting there because they were told they could not go back and be with their loved ones. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know what your rights are, you simply don't have any.
Yeah, there's all kinds of like people in the news here, people